How prejudice, greed, and desperation created a trail of tears. How many of you in your childhood have been told about our forefathers and the great early leaders of our country? The teachers will tell you about their integrity, honesty, courage in battle. One of the best examples of this is George Washington. He's a fatherly figure who, according to Wims, could not tell a lie. These stories and heroics begin to instill in you a feeling that our political leaders can be trustworthy and credible and have the highest patriotic loyalty to the Republic and the people and citizens they serve. In the next few minutes, we're going to uncover how some of the highest leaders in our country have misused a position of power to play out hatred against an entire race of people. This is a true story of how a president distanced himself from his supporters, and in desperation to earn back the favor of his voters, along with a corrupt state government, he passed legislation and acts that would make it illegal for the American Indians in the southeastern United States to live there. Many Americans have been convinced that this could never happen in our country, and that our leaders would not let something like this happen. See if in this speech, if you identify similarities in the corruption and overreach that has been uncovered in our lifetime and with past administrations. The truth is that our leaders, with the great power we entrusted them, have to be constantly watched and monitored. If not, they could rapidly work to take away our freedoms, our property, and our basic rights. This speech exposes how political officials can make decisions that will damage or alter lives of people who they are sworn to defend and protect. Through these acts of vengeance and hatred against the people, two people had a chance encounter and gave me a personal tie to these events that happened 180 years ago. Growing up in Middle Tennessee, we learned about the historical leaders and founders of our country, especially the ones from our home state. One of the most famous, according to Nestor, The Age of Jackson and the Art of American Power, is Andrew Jackson, a military leader, congressman, and senator who was a resident of Tennessee. He became the 7th President of the United States in 1829. He is best known for his victory over the English in the Battle of New Orleans. Jackson, a rugged, tough individual who is said to be as tough as aged hickory wood, and the men serving under him actually nicknamed him Old Hickory. He had actually been shot in battle one time and would not let the surgeons remove his arm, and they amply named him Old Hickory. Andrew Jackson is a resident of Tennessee and has an 1,100-acre estate named the Hermitage in a city named Old Hickory east of Nashville. As a child in the 5th grade, we visited the Hermitage on a field trip. They take you around and give you a tour, and they tell us all about his great accomplishments and his victories in battle, but they don't tell you about his animosity toward the American Indian. A little known fact about the Hermitage in that area is that the base that I'm currently serving in has a flying squadron, has had one since 1817. In 1821, a farm was donated to the unit. It is next door and adjacent to Andrew Jackson's Hermitage. That all these years later, there's still a flying squadron. They have now moved to the International Airport. They're known as the 118th Airlift Wing, and the flying squadron is the 105th Old Hickory Squadron. They use a likeness of Andrew Jackson on their emblem and on their unit patch. The history book by Corbett reveals that early in his military career, Jackson had fought in two of the most bloody and vicious battles in his career against the American Indians. In 1813, he fought against the Creek Indians, and in 1817, it was against the Seminole Indians. It is reported that his animosity toward the American Indian is due to the cruelty and savage acts he witnessed in these two battles. Knowing that Jackson was desperate to regain his popularity with the Southern voters, the governor of Georgia, along with its corrupt political leaders, convinced Jackson to pass an act that would make it illegal for the American Indians living in the southeastern United States. They would have to be removed west of the Mississippi. This piece of legislation became known as the Indian Removal Act of 1830. It was signed by Jackson on May 28th of 1830. This authorized Jackson to negotiate with the 5 civilized tribes in southeast United States. These tribes consisted of the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Muskie Creek, the Seminole, and the original Cherokee Nation. The prejudice and resentment carried out during his 8-year presidency, Jackson would pass 70 removal treaties in his time as president. He relocated nearly 50,000 American Indians to the territories west of the Mississippi River. The most well-known treaty, the New Echota, forced the Cherokees living in Tennessee and Georgia and North Carolina to be relocated. The trail that they were forced to walk is now known as the Trail of Tears. It's over 1,000 miles long, and it is estimated that of the 16,000 Cherokee Indians that was forced to make this journey, 4,000 of them passed away on this route. It is now known as the Trail of Tears. While visiting my mother after the passing of one of her sisters, we were looking at some old family photos. And I commented that some of our family has high cheekbones and features of American Indian. That's when my mom told me that my great-grandmother was actually full-blooded Cherokee Indian, and that she had met my great-grandfather while hiding out in rural Tennessee, in the rural hills of Tennessee, during the Indian Removal Act. After returning home, me and my wife visited the Cherokee Indian Reservation in Cherokee, North Carolina, and discovered Andrew Jackson had been the father, the brainchild of this Indian Removal Act. After researching, that's when I discovered that my grandmother and my great-grandfather had actually met due to the Indian Removal Act. In conclusion, the 7th president, harboring justice and hatred, assisted in and coerced by the corrupt state government of Georgia, he enacted acts and treaties that were unlawful and caused one of the biggest examples of genocide in our country's history. This is an example of how, if allowed to operate without consequences, our government has and will overreach and abuse the power that we have given them. By not rising up and defending the rightful owners of these lands, Jackson, in the 8 years he was responsible for killing of thousands and altering many more Indians' family traditions that will never be recovered. These are brutal and sacred lands, the burial and sacred lands that will never belong to the Indians again. This is a horrible act of forcing the American Indians to walk thousands of miles on the route. Many perished along the way, that is now known as the Trail of Tears. A true tragedy and a black eye on the American history. We must never turn a blind eye and allow this to happen again. We stay involved with politics and monitor the people we elect. In order to prevent something like this from ever happening, so when you see the brown signs and you're traveling up and down the interstates of our great nation, make time to stop. Visit these locations. Do your research. Research your history that may be right in your backyard. Take your kids. Make a game of this. Take your grandchildren. Take them to the library. Let them see and hear about these our history, our events that happened that formed our country. And then take them to these places and let these places come to life. I challenge you to do this. And you never know. You might be like me and discovering that the man on the $20 bill was responsible for your great-grandparents having a chance meeting and giving me a tie to the Trail of Tears and the Indian Removal Act that was 180 years ago.